3, 2, 1.
Hi there, I'm Karen Kincaid Brady, and I'm the Executive Director here at the New Mexico Museum of Space History. I'm here to kind of give you a bit of a tour of our facility that was built in 1976. We are actually celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, which will be held on October 3rd, where we will be inducting new members into our International Space Hall of Fame. So I'd like to get started right here. This great German Air Force Tornado was brought in from Holloman Air Force Base a few years ago. And Lee, I believe you said you actually...
Yeah, filmed this. So years ago, when I was a resident here, we used to test high resolution thermal imagers up on the mountain just to the north of here, probably about 7 miles north of here. And this aircraft used to fly north to south, low-level attack runs, and we used to track them with a thermal imager. That was the Speed V, for those of you that remember that device. We'll show it to you again sometime.
Yeah, so long history here in the Tularosa Basin. So it's exciting that we have it here to greet visitors here at the museum. So let's start walking up to our rocket park.
Okay, sounds great. Racer, you want to go to the big cam of the rocket park? You want to start on the lower level down here? Or show one of the upstairs? Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Where you want to start?
Oh, let's start. Maybe we can get this and then get little Joe.
Oh yeah, that's good. All right, Racer.
Good.
Yep. You ready?
Sir.
You ready?
10-4.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so we have here our V2 rocket engine. So fun story about this V2 rocket engine. So it was actually tested here in Alamogordo. And as you can see, it's in pretty rough shape. That's because it crash landed out here over 54. And when it did so, people came through in town and picked up pieces of this crashed rocket. Then the Air Force went around and started knocking on doors throughout town to go and collect those pieces that people had picked up, because You can't have pieces of a rocket hanging out in people's homes.
And if you're trying to figure out why it went down, it's hard to do that when all the parts that may tell you why it went down are at somebody else's house.
Exactly.
Okay, sweet. All right, let's move to the next one. Racer, you can stay with us if you want.
I want to make sure you're able to get.
Well, let me go back over here then. Wow, no. Actually, yeah, come right there to the top of the steps. There you go, perfect. And this is Big John?
Little Joe.
Little Joe. All right, folks, this is Little Joe, who really isn't that little.
Little Joe is not little. This fantastic rocket that you see before you is the crowning glory of our John P. Stapp Air and Space Park. Little Joe, there's only 2 known remaining Little Joes, and supposedly there's a third, but strangely, he's missing. We don't know where he is. The other Little Joe, too, that we know of is in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. Now, our Little Joe was just restored this past December, which is why Little Joe is so beautifully painted right now. The restoration was so meticulous that the restorers went up and down that silver base with tiny paint brushes to remove the rust from every little rivet, and then clean it again with water to make sure all the rust was perfectly clean. The restorers were from Alabama, from Blast Off Rockets, and they were chosen specifically by the Smithsonian, as Little Joe is on loan to us here from the Smithsonian. Fun fact, the rocket is owned by the Smithsonian, but the fins down at the bottom actually belong to us here at the museum, because we added those back on for display.
Sweet. And when did Joe fly? 60s?
Joe flew in the 60s.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, where do you want to go next?
Let's take a good look at the building, and then we'll go inside.
Okay. This is better than night at the museum.
You want to get like a good
Yeah.
shot?
Yeah. All right, Karen, tell us about this monstrosity.
So this we affectionately call the Q. It was built in 1976, originally to house the International Space Hall of Fame. The International Space Hall of Fame still exists and is housed here at the museum. The International Space Hall of Fame Foundation is actually the foundation that is the philanthropic and philanthropic arm of the museum. So they help us with all of our fundraising and grant writing in order to help support the museum and support the state that owns the museum. This building is based off of a nice, wonderful cube design, very brutalist architecture. And now that it is turning 50 years old in October, is reaching its historic birthday.
Yeah, wow.
The fun fact about this museum, it was built to be an office building for the International Space Hall of Fame, which means the elevators are not elevators that allow for anything large to go in. That means all the large artifacts that are inside were installed prior to all of these windows.
Oh, wow.
So that means they're there, they're not moving.
Right.
Because there is no freight elevator,
Wow.
only people movers. So let's go inside and check it out.
Sounds great. All right, Racer, stay with us. And Racer, have you given a panoramic shot of the area as well as a big one of the building?
Yes, sir, we have.
All right, now I got to show everybody this real quick. One of my favorite parts of the museum is coming to visit this little store right here that has all kinds of stuff you're going to love. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, you can actually order offline from here.
Yes, you can.
So you can order online here and they will ship it to you. So when I go shopping after this, we're going to show you guys the store, and anything that you like, you can call them up or email them. They'll be happy to send it to you.
I will put the link up on screen.
Sounds good. All right, hopefully we won't lose you on the elevator. Let me come back.
So before we go up in the elevator, this room here, you'll notice it's entirely white. That is because this space is meant to replicate the area that astronauts were in before they loaded up into the spaceship and rocket that took them up into space. Also, you'll notice we have some signatures right above the elevator. That's because we've had 2 astronauts come through and have signed the door and your entry into space.
Sweet. Which 2 astronauts? Do we know?
I can't read it. If Mike were here, he'd be able to tell you.
Yeah, Langren and I can't read it, whether we're with those 2 were.
Is one of them, and Ledinger.
That sounds great.
Yep.
See, Kirby knows everything.
I don't know everything.
Almost. Almost.
She's been here. I won't say the longest because that would be mean, but she's been here long. Both of our elevators are meant to replicate the space shuttles.
Wow. That's right. We start at the top and come down. It makes it easier. After you, ma'am. Racer, how do we do in the elevator?
I'm still receiving a live feed. It's a little choppy, but we're still receiving.
Okay. All right.
So welcome to a little bit of history in the background on archaeoastronomy, as well as telescopes and some early early explorations of space. This telescope, if you're able to look through it, you actually get to glimpse some of the night sky and some of the constellations through it.
Well, let's see if we can do that. Raise it up just a little bit. Oh, yeah. There we go. Now you get to see what it looks like outside.
Here, we've got a timeline, space exploration, as well as patches from NASA. This space will be changing this year, and it's going to be dedicated entirely to the International Space Hall of Fame.
Oh, nice. And this being your 50th year, and that's marking the 50th year from the opening?
From the opening.
Okay, great. That's October.
That is October 3rd will be our induction gala and the anniversary celebrating 50 years.
Sweet. Let's see if we can come back in October.
Please do. Here we have our display on the White Sands Missile Range and Holloman Air Force Base. This will also be changing and turning into a display discussing why this museum is here, why Holloman Air Force Base is here, and why White Sands Missile Range is here, why this location was chosen.
Nice.
Through here, you're going to get one of the best views in the city.
So as we can see, we've got the Intimidator down there.
Sir, are you
How
on
big?
cellular or Wi-Fi at this point?
I'm on cellular, I should be. I was hoping it would work through all this glass.
Wi-Fi should work also if you can see it.
So far in the back, you'll see a white strip. That is White Sands.
Now you want to go into a little bit of history of White Sands?
So White Sands is, of course, where the very first fuel rocket was set into outer space. It is also the current White Sands Missile Range where missiles continue to be tested. And further out, you will find Trinity site.
You know, sometimes they used to notify you guys when they were going to test something. Do they still do that from time to time?
From time to time. Every once in a while, when you're looking out this way and towards Holloman, you'll start to see a bit of a haze. And that's from the new high-speed super truck.
Oh, wow. All right, let me get this.
Here is more information about White Sands and why it was chosen as we moved into World War II. And the site for Trinity and why it was chosen for building the bomb.
Gotta love it, folks. You guys also do a Trinity tour.
We do every October, so long as they continue to offer it.
Okay, and then will that be coinciding with the event this year?
It will be 2 weeks after our
Okay.
October event. And tickets are available for purchase online. You can find the link on our website, but it's also available on the International Space Hall of Fame Foundation
And there's
website.
different tiers of tickets. In other words, you can do one for one event or multiple, or one ticket does everything.
No, we haven't started selling the tickets for the October 3rd event yet, but the Trinity site tickets are available.
Okay, all right.
So we also have our New Mexico Space Trail. As you can see, space has been very important throughout New Mexico. And so all of these sites are different sites of space history, starting as far back as 100 BC, all the way to the present day.
Wow.
We're actually in the process of updating it, so you may soon see even more sites.
Nice. Well, we're going over to the footprints that they found at the White Sands Park after we leave here.
Nice.
Right.
We just put in a new exhibit at White Sands Testing Facility that includes the footprints.
Oh, nice.
So this
Yeah.
space right here talks a little bit about sort of space machinery and things like that. It's a bit of a hodgepodge at the moment because the space is in transition. Within the next year, it is going to be shifting to our archaeoastronomy site. So we will be talking about Chaco Canyon, Stonehenge, other early archaeoastronomy sites. It's going to be a space that's going to have a lot of sunrise and sunset feelings and colors, stars in the sky. Going to be an entirely new experience here. We're also looking at putting in a stargazing dome here in the corner. So coming back later in the year, you're going to have an entirely new experience in this space, as well as.
Okay. All right.
You want to come over?
Yeah, let me see. Is that any better, Racer?
Because of where we are here, struggle with this also a little bit.
All right.
But yeah, so this space is going to have an entirely new experience for you to encounter. But for right now, what we do have, we have up here, we have a model of Sputnik. Because the original, of course, burned up in space.
Mhm.
We also have a model of the response to Sputnik with Explorer.
Yeah.
One of the really interesting responses to Sputnik are these two devices here. These were actually used here in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And when Sputnik went up, there was a great deal of fear within the US and what that possibly meant. Because we were deep within the Cold War at this point. And so one of the responses was to involve the public. And these really cheap telescope devices were created so that amateur astronomers could go out and they could start searching the sky for Sputnik. And so citizens would take these and they would send in to the government the locations of Sputnik using these. And so a citizen here in Alamogordo actually fished these out of the trash.
Wow.
And brought them to the museum and donated them to us so that we could have them. But so it's just, these are really interesting facets from the Cold War and a way to involve the citizens of the US in this response to Sputnik in the Cold War. But that's truly how fearful we were of Russia.
Thank
And-
God for dumpster divers.
Exactly. And the USSR during the Cold War.
We have a miniature Trinity.
We have miniature Trinity, and so this is Trinitite, actually around our little miniature Trinity. And so this is the obelisk that you would see if you go to the Trinity site and take our Trinity tour.
Wow. Nice. And then here you got video of, I guess this is all Apollo 17.
This is Apollo 17. And so video of that trip and that experience and that mission.
This is the one where he said, I was walking on the moon June.
So up here, this is one of my favorite pieces that we have. This is actually the moon that hung behind Walter Cronkite
Oh, really?
during the Apollo 11 lunar landing.
So Walter Cronkite is mooning us now. Nice. All right, sweet. Now you gotta see, wow, this is one of my favorite museums.
So along here, we have replicas of various space capsules and rockets, and what they would look like next to their astronauts. So we have a Mercury Redstone rocket.
As in Redstone Arsenal.
And then we have the Mercury capsule, the Gemini capsule, and of course the Apollo capsule. And then here we have a gargoyle airplane.
Now, what's the significance of the Gargoyle airplane? Re-entry?
It's one of the first U.S. Navy's guided missiles.
Wow. Okay.
You want me to go and give you the?
Yeah, well, let's go around and we'll get to the front and I'll hand over to that. We should be getting the, oh, that's right. We're going around the backside here.
Yeah, we're kind of in the middle of the building right now.
Yeah, and then I might want to, yeah, I might want to do that Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi is just spotty. It's going to be MSH staff, and it's that one right there.
All right, hold on one second. Let me get the. Giving me my camera controls. All right, well, you got it now, right? Or no? Okay.
Okay.
All right, hold on. Let me. Right, sir. Okay. Are we getting solid? All right, sweet. More better. I remember this.
So this here is a mock-up interior design of the Space Lab module. So meant to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. As you can see, very old school, as they say in space. Takes a long time to update a lot of the command. This actually is another one of the pieces that we're getting ready to update. This entire space is going to be changing in the next year. This space is going to be dedicated to the animals of space and the response of the US to Sputnik. So we're going to have more about our favorite astrochimp, Ham, as well as Laika.
Now, is Ham buried here?
Ham is buried here. We'll talk about Ham in just a moment so that you know who he is. But it's also we're going to give some time to Laika, who was sent up by the Soviet Union. We're going to talk about the flies that went up to space. We're going to talk about the cats that went up to space and the other animals that were sent up to space. We're also going to talk about some of the other responses by the US to the Soviet Union as they sent Sputnik up. But so if we come around here to the side, so this is Ham. Ham was the first chimpanzee that went to space. So Ham and a number of other chimps were actually trained near here at Holloman Air Force Base so that we could find out, potentially learn how humans might react to being and working in space. People just weren't convinced what the result of space would be to humans in space. So we decided to send a chimp up first. They felt that they had the appropriate dexterity to do similar things. So they trained them to work controls in a module similar to the one that you see right here that's known as a couch. And so Ham was launched into space and he survived. So you can see in the photo right over here. And he returned home safe and sound and ended up spending some time at the National Zoo in DC, and then eventually lived out the remainder of his days in North Carolina. And then he was buried here at this museum.
Wait. See? And then we got, actually, this is on Ham over here.
Those are the chairs that Ham and the other chimps were actually trained in.
Sweet. Alright. Now, we'll go over here and you guys can see how bad I fly a space shuttle. Is this running?
Yep.
All right, folks. This is something that I have a little bit of experience with. Not particularly this simulator, but another simulator. The U.S. space program also has rocket packs that we're going to see a little later. And those rocket packs allow astronauts to fly around outside of the spacecraft. And so what I'm going to do here is get in here and show you how well I can crash this. Now, I got to push a button here somewhere, right? Or no, I'm already on it. There we go.
Then press a joystick to accept the selection.
Now, I have learned that no fear means you will crash and burn at the bottom.
Board. Hi, Roger. I'll be your instructor. Today's training session. You've chosen the novice skill level.
Yeah, because I don't want to crash and burn live on TV.
Will control the engine up and down. Slide. Auto. Will control roll options. Simulation starts at approximately 10,000 feet, about 1 minute prior to a normal land. In general, we'll fly the shuttle at a constant pitch attitude until we're at land. About 2,000 feet, smooth and steady fall. to reduce its vertical speed in preparation for touchdown. The heads-up display is the primary instrument that helps you stay on the desired course. Don't forget to flare. Your mission is to safely land on the runway at a vertical speed less than 15 feet per second. Easy, right? To achieve a smooth landing, the joystick will provide the necessary controls. You'll receive all the training first on how to use the joystick. Then you'll get your chance at joining the elite team of astronauts who successfully flown on a space shuttle.
Or crash.
As pilot, part of your task is keeping a successful landing is to reduce the vertical speed of the shuttle to less than 15 feet per second at touchdown. You'll do this by changing the pitch attitude of the orbit using the joystick. Pitch the shuttle down, simply move the joystick forward, away from the stick center. Achieving the correct pitch attitude. A few final thoughts. Landing the space shuttle is a difficult task, and NASA astronauts train a long time to develop the skills to do it successfully. Therefore, don't be too disappointed if you plan it the first time. If you remember to move the joystick slowly and perform that all-important flare at 2,000 feet, you've got a great chance of joining the elite team that will pilot America's spaceships. Second, review your mission. Say, best landing today. Good luck. Here you go.
Okay, I'll take it for it. Go for landing.
Go. Go.
GNC, go and go. Capcom, we are go for landing. Discovery here. Stay on the center line. You need to take forward. Discovery here. Show you everything around the nominal flight path. Follow the guide. Discovery here. On center line. On flight path. Brace yourself. You're down. 30, 30, 20, 20. 185.
There we go.
That was a truly stirring landing. Airspeed, rate of descent, and touchdown location were all extremely close to the ideal values. Have you done this before, or are you just a little lost? Well, I hope you enjoy learning to land the space shuttle. Thanks for joining me. Let's get up and give someone else a chance.
We're just going to keep that score right there. All right. Where to now, ma'am? Sweet. Right behind you.
So here we have a bust of the fastest man alive, Colonel Dr. John Paul Stapp.
Now, this is the man who strapped himself into a rocket sled.
Yeah, that he did. So he actually tested on a, his sled got up to 632 miles per hour and in just 5 seconds. And then he hit the water break at the end of the track and came to a dead stop in 1.4 seconds. And with that, he experienced 46.2 G's of force on his body. And it is because of this and the fact that this was in an open sled that he is known as the fastest man alive, because he is still to this day, the only person to have gone that fast in an open sled. As you can see here from the photos, it took quite a toll on his body and actually rearranged his face temporarily. Dr. Stapp is an inductee to the Hall of Fame, but he is also one of the founders of this museum and served on our governor's commission after it became a state museum.
And he also detached his retinas in this, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is a lot of G-forces to put on your body.
Yeah. In fact, the most G-forces ever put on a human that lived, as far as I know.
Yes. However, his tests led to the development of seatbelts, and it helped to create improvements to increase the chances of surviving a crash or ejection from a plane. So it also developed safe methods of liftoffs and reentry for astronauts and better safety harnesses in automobiles. So his tests were vitally important in multiple areas.
And he did all these things to himself
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't want anybody else to get hurt while he was doing the testing.
Exactly.
So every test that he set up, he actually became the test dummy for the test.
Yep. And we actually, if you look out through our windows, we have the track that he did these tests on.
That's a piece of the track because the whole thing was like, what, a mile long or something?
We have other parts of the track out at our storage facility.
Wow. And that's his chair?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Here we go. Level 4, folks.
So now we are entering into our rocket exhibit.
Okay.
So if you remember, I told you that anything large that you see inside this museum is there forever. This exhibit and this floor will always be rockets. However, we are in the process of getting ready to update this exhibit, make it a little newer. It will still, however, remain rockets. We do have in here, we have a RL-10 engine cutaway. And if I remember correctly, this little model here was actually put together by Von Braun.
Wow. I used to have a friend of mine who actually worked with Von Braun. And he told me that Von Braun was the everlasting comedian. He always had something funny to say. So one day my buddy was in a launch complex and they launched a rocket, one of the first American rockets. And it was right after the V2. So I can't remember what rocket we had right after the V2, but it was right after that. And so the rocket launched, it went up a couple hundred feet, started doing somersaults in the air. They detonated it. Everything was honky-dory. So Von Braun picks up the phone calls my buddy and said, if you wanted to do aerobatics, you should have used a V2. So von Braun hung up on him. So a couple of weeks later, von Braun is launching a rocket, and inside their launch complexes, they have jugs of water in case they get trapped inside, because if it blows up on the launch pad, you have to stay there for like 48 hours or something, and the only thing you have is water. And the water is not the best tasting water because it's been there for a while. So 2 weeks later, von Braun launches a rocket. It gets up about 20 feet above the pad and detonates, which means that von Braun has to stay inside of his bunker for 48 hours. So my buddy picks up the phone and calls von Braun. Von Braun answers the phone, and my buddy goes, "You want some water?" and hung up on von Braun. So that was the kind of ribbing that went forth back and forth between von Braun and his crew. So that was at Redstone, where that test took place. So, all right, let's go to the next one. Oh, you want to do the gyro? That's a V2. Or that's the timer
Yes.
and the gyro.
Yep, so we have a timer and we have a gyro. So this, so the timer here was among the 300 boxcars of German rocket material that came to White Sands Proving Ground during Operation Paperclip. So it controlled rocket functions, which had to occur at specified time, and in a very definite order. So it controlled radio equipment, gyroscopes, and pressurized valves. And so then this is an original V2 guidance system. And this one actually was never flown, but instead was used for research at the Germans' testing facility. And it consisted of a 3-axis gyro and 2 accelerometers. And readings from these devices were compared during the flight. And from these readings, corrections to the missile's flight path could be made with the control surfaces located at the tail end of the missile.
So this is what kept the pointy end pointed towards the sky.
Yep. So this was actually put together a number of years ago by a Boy Scout troop, and talks about inertial navigation and how that all turned into gyroscopes and allowed us to create the things like what you saw over there. And so really it all comes down to Newton and his 3 laws of motion, which allowed us to start creating the gyroscopes and lead us towards the ability to create those missiles and those guidance systems.
I'm behind you, wherever you want to go. Now, folks, just so you know, I am intentionally not showing you everything, because we don't want you to see everything. We want you to come here and see the museum.
And as I said, a lot of this is all being updated, so
Yeah, what you see now might be like this next week.
when you do come, you can see all these things.
In fact, every time I come here, they got something new. I love the trash cans.
The trash cans are fantastic. So this is one of my favorite galleries. This is our satellite gallery. All focused on the satellites that orbit the Earth. And this one, this part right here, I always find fascinating. And I joke with my husband that it's going to be my PhD thesis. And it talks about space trash. I did my PhD thesis on the cultural landscape of Trinity Base. And so space trash itself and how it orbits the Earth, that's its own cultural landscape because of the things that we have just left up in space. And so this graphic here shows all those objects that are orbiting Earth right now.
And the vast majority of those were put there by no other than Elon Musk. The number one contributor of space junk, folks. I've talked about this for years. And the fact that we should not be putting thousands of pieces of debris up there, because the problem is when one of these little itty bitty pieces runs into another little itty bitty piece, that makes more itty bitty little pieces. And those little itty bitty pieces run into other little itty bitty pieces, and they make more and more and more and more itty bitty pieces. So eventually this will become just a bunch of junk, and you won't hardly be able to go out of it or come into it. Plus, it takes away from astronomy. It does all kinds of things. Space junk is bad.
But it also, when it impacts it impacts our satellites, it impacts our
International Space Station, the solar panels.
Exactly, it causes extreme damage. But so it's this really interesting study in terms of, you know, where it is, how it's mapped, and that cultural impact of what we've left behind.
Yeah, well, here's a prime example right there, folks. That's what something the size of a grain of sand will do to a solar panel when it's traveling at thousands of miles an hour.
And because as it's orbiting Earth, it does travel so quickly.
Oh, we got a FLIR. Look at that.
So here we have 3 screens. Unfortunately, our ultralight panel went down recently, but you can see here how you're viewed from these different light sources.
Ta-da.
And so how you're viewed by your friends, by Pit Viper, and once we get the camera back up and running, how you look to a bee. How you're viewed by your friends, by
Okay.
Pit Viper, and once we get the camera back up and running, how you look to a bee. And then here we have various models of various satellites that have gone up and into space. So this is how our other galleries that you've seen upstairs will soon be looking: very bright, very vibrant,
Nice.
very active.
And see, here's the weather satellite, guys. That's an old one. That's almost as old as me.
Almost.
Yeah. Actually, it's older than me. We're both antiques. Oh, I hear Lost in Space.
Oh, we're almost there. That's from our most popular exhibit. So I love these here. This is from the Launch Complex blockhouse window at Cape Canaveral.
Oh, wow.
So all that glass.
Shows you how thick it is.
That bunkhouse from when they were sending off rockets.
Keep it from going boom and coming in. Nice.
And then still all thick. And there's just that one little crack on the inside.
Is that, you think that's a lamination, or you actually think the glass is actually cracked?
The glass is cracked.
Okay.
And then you can see how it splinters even down here.
Okay. Let me see if I can get a better view of that. So yeah, one of the layers. Oh, it actually looks like the back layer. All right, so here you guys can see how many layers of glass there are. Each one of these is like a plastic coating in between. So the green is the glass. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 15 pieces of glass. That's solid.
Mhm.
All right.
This is our space flight gallery. All artifacts from various space flights, both Soviet and US.
Nice.
These watercolors that you see in these backlit panels all depict life in Cape Canaveral during the Apollo years. And then we have various spacesuits from both the US and Soviet flights.
Awesome.
This is one of my favorite places to come whenever I'm having a day that I just need to take a break. Just come and stare at our moon rock from Apollo 17.
Wow. See, I told you you'd get mooned if you came here. We've been mooned by Walter Cronkite's moon, and now we've got a piece of the moon here. So you can't beat that. Mooned if you came here. We've been mooned by Walter Cronkite's moon, and now we've got a piece of the moon. All right.
This, of course, was brought back by Schmidt. And then we also have Schmidt's watch from Apollo 17. And then you can't come to a space museum and not check out the space food.
Oh, yeah.
And we have Soviet space food as well as American space food. It all looks very appetizing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I love the Pepsi and the Coke can. That's.
Oh, yeah.
I guess you could actually, that's still a carbonated drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they would actually put the Coke in a bag on the inside, and then the propellant is outside the bag. So is that when you open that up, it squeezes the bag and you get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because gravity isn't going to help you a bit. Nice. I don't know if I saw that the last time I was here.
We have plenty more. So, of course, another simulator.
No, I can crash this one, folks. I know it, so I'm not going to do it. I'm good at crashing this one. I'll have to come here sometime when I don't want something else to do. All right. And this is Skylab right here, folks. That's where it all started. And this was actually a piece of another rocket. And we turned it into a laboratory. So we were living in a fuel tank, literally, not previously used, but that's what it was. I think it was for fuel, that section. Yeah. Okay. I love the shoes. They lock in. See that down there on the bottom?
So this is our most popular exhibit. Many of these posters are signed. If we ever get any of the stars come to visit, they'll often add their name for us. Of course, they're original posters.
Yeah.
So, of course, we're all aware, reality often influences fiction.
But often,
Science fiction has influenced reality, and that's the basis of this exhibit. It's that idea that parts of science fiction have led to reality, like our virtual reality viewers.
It switched you back over to cellular. Hopefully it'll pick the Wi-Fi back up.
Okay.
But some of the biggest things, of course, Star Trek communicator, leading to cell phones.
Now, the truth be known, let me move this up here. The truth be known, Motorola made this flip phone because of the Star Trek communicator. That was intentionally done to be like a Star Trek communicator. All right.
But so much that we have has been a result of science fiction. It's all sort of led to reality. So part of this this gallery,
But it's in the galaxy.
was created when we inducted Gene Roddenberry, but we keep it because it's very popular, of course, because it's Star Trek.
Yeah.
But
Now, isn't Gene on something here or has contributed something here or something?
no, I don't. He actually hasn't contributed anything.
Okay. All right.
But again, there's so much from Star Trek that has led to reality, most notably, of course, the communicators, but iPads as well.
No, I was going to get Scotty to beam me up, but I don't think that the engines have enough power to get me anywhere. So, but here it is.
But also, of course, Michelle Nichols, part-time on Star Trek, led her to work with NASA. And she influenced many women and African-American women to join NASA and led to women entering careers in STEM. And her work volunteering for NASA directly led to multiple women entering the space field.
Now, do you know the story about Michelle Nichols and her conversation with Martin Luther King?
I do.
Do you
So,
want to tell us that story? Because I think that is a very important story.
so she almost quit Star Trek after the first season. And because she felt like all she was doing was answering phones and playing the secretary. And she was having dinner with Martin Luther King, and she told him that she was looking at quitting the show. And he told her that she could not do that.
Under any
Under
circumstances.
any circumstances, that he and his daughters watched the show every week, and how important it was to his daughters that she was up there on the command bridge. A Black woman was on the bridge, on the command of a spaceship, and that it was so important to them to see her, to have her visibility there, and that she had to stay on the show.
She was in charge of all communications from a federal space craft.
Exactly. And so that she had to stay, and so she stayed. And if you notice, as you move into season 2, her role starts to change a bit. There are times that she's not just doing the communications, she's flying the ship. It leads to the first interracial kiss
Right.
on primetime TV. It leads to more important and more diverse roles for her on that show. And as I said, it leads to her becoming an important figure with NASA. She was actually a member of our museum. She was very active and visited this museum regularly. And she flew on Sophia on one of the inaugural flights with Sophia for NASA and live streamed it to answer questions during the flight. So her part in Star Trek became vitally important and became such an important and inspirational role, not just for Black women, but for women around the world. And it was, I mean, Lieutenant Uhura is still one of those amazing roles.
Household name.
Yep, absolutely.
And now also Sophia, if those of you who will recall, when we went to the Pima Air and Space Museum out in Pima, Arizona, we saw the Triton rocket out there. And then when we went to the Aircraft Museum, Sophia was parked around back, and the curator of that museum was nice enough to take us around back so we could see Miss Sophia. So that's the same aircraft that Uhura flew on. Okay.
Little tribes of humans who may have been the forefathers, the Egyptians.
Battlestar Galactica. What would life be without Battlestar Galactica?
We are bored.
Here we go. Look at all the spacesuits.
So we have multiple spacesuits from various important moments in science fiction, movies, and TV shows. Everyone, of course, loves Galaxy Quest. We have Winona Ryder's suit from Stranger Things.
Elon had to give you a spacesuit.
And then we, of course, have this one was actually worn by Nathan Fillion in Firefly. So you can see why this is one of our most popular exhibits. And it's getting ready to have some new displays. And when we went to Albuquerque Comic-Con, John Barrowman might be loaning us some items very
Oh,
soon
nice.
from Doctor Who.
Nice.
I am watching the Van Studio.
Here we go.
So this is one of our newest installations. This is our wall of firsts. And through it, you can check out various firsts throughout space history, such as the first lunar rover. And you can read it either in English or in Spanish. First close-up observations of a comet. You can also browse by people, so we could do just in terms of New Mexico space flight, women in space, the future of space flight. You can also browse by time, so such as early rocketry, modern era, shuttle era. So there's various ways that you can interact with this. So it gives you a variety of interaction,
Cool.
all at the touch of your fingers.
I love it. You were talking about first observations. I was one of the first people on Earth to actually see Hale-Bopp.
That's awesome.
What we did was we flew a red eye from Seattle to Washington, D.C. And so Hale-Bopp was approaching from the north, and you couldn't see it from North America. But when you got up to 35,000 feet, you could see it. So we took a night vision scope, with a 3x magnifier on it and could see it as it was coming in. It was pretty crazy. It was well worth the trip, but be one of the first few to ever see it.
Very cool. So this down here, this is our, sit down the tunnel lights on.
Oh, wow.
This is our temporary exhibit space.
What a collection of radios. And the crazy part about the radios here, folks, is a lot of these really, really old ones you see, like the Royal Super Sport here, the Futaba down here, this one over here, I'm old enough to have used. That's scary.
So yeah, this is our radio flyer exhibit.
And this is basically the beginning of drones, folks. Now,
So
thank God they don't have a picture of the helicopter I crashed for the U.S. Army. I'm safe. Do you have a built in? Here we go. I'm looking for a GPS and flight controller, and I think that's what I'm seeing here. Oh, that's a tone transmitter. That's not it. I don't see one. We'll have to get you an antique, one of the original flight controllers. But I was going to show you what messed up on ours. I can do it with this. This is good enough. Let me show you here. So we found out the hard way that when you fly a remote control aircraft and you're using GPS, you have to have at least 4 GPS satellites to track. Because what will happen is if you're only using 3 satellites, technically you can be at 2 separate points in space with 3 satellites. And so when you're flying at 70 miles an hour and you're 100 feet above the ground, and all of a sudden your GPS says that you're no longer 100 feet above ground, you're now out in space somewhere, it tells your flight control computer that you need to dive. And it puts your helicopter right into the ground immediately. So they changed the rule that said you can't fly unless you have 4 satellites all the time, from before your flight until after your flight, if you want to fly. But we use devices very similar to what you're seeing right there is what was inside of our helicopter. All right, after you, ma'am.
So this is also a popular place here. You can try on a spacesuit and pose like you're on the moon.
There you go. Now I have a shirt that I bought here the last time I was here, and it has a picture of the solar system on the front of it. But since I've gained 35 pounds since I was here last, that shirt is a little bit larger, which is how I can prove that the solar system is expanding, or at least mine. So I love it. I have to come back. I'm hoping you got an extra large one of those shirts now. That way I can stop making the solar system expand. Now, this is what I did. Not this exact model, but one very close to this, and I'll show it to you here. So in my younger days, there was a company in Northern Virginia, in Reston specifically, and the name of the company was MicroSims. And MicroSims was MicroSims, previously Flightmatic. What you're seeing here is a rocket pack that was not actually designed to fly around on Mars, but was designed to be able to fly around the outside of the International Space Station. Now, to do this effectively, you have to do this while you are spinning to induce vertigo into you. So our company, what was made known famous as the barf ball. The reason for that is when you got into it, it was a giant sphere, think a giant radar ball, and we painted the inside of it with a reflective material like they put on movie screens. Then on the floor of it, we put a barber's chair, so that the barber's chair would rotate. Then we had a bar that came up from the back of the barber's chair and came forward with a helmet mounted on it. So that was perfectly aligned with the center of rotation. And so we would lower that helmet down onto your head and then strap your head in and strap you to the barber's chair. So as that if it was spinning around and you got off center, you didn't start flopping around on the inside. Then over top of the helmet, there was a projector that projected the imagery on the inside of the screen, which was concaved, so as that it had to be manipulated by a computer to make it look like you were floating around in space. So once you were inside, strapped in, we would flip a switch and it would start spinning, so as that you didn't have your brain to tell you what was up and down, or your inner ear to tell you what was up and down. Only your vision could guide you to where you needed to fly. And the crazy part about it was the astronauts thought it looked very realistic, as far as we could do the Earth in the background, the space station, the international, or excuse me, the space shuttle in the background, and the armed and everything coming out of it. We took their models and put them in for them to fly around in. So it was known as the barf ball because once you had been flying it for a while, because you had been spinning around for the last 10 or 15 minutes, when you got out with the vertigo, it made you rather ill. In fact, some people didn't get out before they got sick. So again, now you know why it was called the barf ball, but that was part of my contribution to space flight, or at least the rocket packs that NASA takes up on the space shuttle, or used to anyway. All right, where to now, ma'am? We're it? Okay, good. That's it. You got to come see it, folks. We're going to go to the gift shop and spend money, because that's what we always do when we come here. You should too.
Yes,
Come here and spend money. And you can donate.
yes, you can. Any donations made to the International Space Hall of Fame Foundation go to support the museum.
There you go. See? Come out in October. What's the date?
October 3rd.
October 3rd.
October 3rd is the gala, and 2 weeks later is the Trinity tour. The Trinity tour. I'll have to look up the exact date. Because I don't remember that date off the top.
I love it.
Fantastic graphic designer. Everything's done in house.
I love it. All right, here it is. Thank you very much, man.
Thank
Greatly
you.
appreciate it. All right, folks, we are going to have a look-see at all of the great things that they have here inside of the museum. Now, this is their gift shop, all kinds of shirts, stuff here. Again, you can order all of this from their website, and they will ship it to you. Legos. I know some of y'all want the Legos.
I want the Legos.
I know you did. I knew you did. All kinds of stuff here, folks. You can't beat it. I think they found out that I had said that the universe was expanding, so they're not making that shirt anymore. I don't see any in double extra fat. What's that? Oh, I guess that means I better leave here. Let me see. All right, well, she wanted an alien, but this guy floating around is the best I can come up with for an alien.
Sort of.
All right, guys. Well, thank all you guys for joining us here. You need to come to the New Mexico Air and Space Museum here in Alamogordo. As you can see, some of the new locals showing up are excited to be here. So with that, thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show. We've got another stop after we leave here. So from everybody here, thanks for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.